today we're not just going to see an archaeological site in the Judean desert, but we're going to do some hiking as well. I hope you're able to join us. So I hope that you're ready for an adventure today. Shalom and welcome to this teaching channel. We're uniquely going to actually do some hiking together down what is called the snake path of a site called Masada. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for also subscribing if you feel led, and hit that red bell also if you want to keep informed of all of our future teachings. So let me get my handy topography map out here and show you where we're heading. We're heading to the edge of the Judean desert, to the shoreline, the western shoreline of the Dead Sea, the lowest place on earth. Masada was one of several palace fortresses of Herod the Great, this Judean ruler who ruled between 37 BC and 4 BC, even though some scholars suggest just a slightly later death date. But we're interested in viewing the site itself. We're going to see what's on top in terms of store rooms and synagogues and a palace. But this video really primarily keys in on a hike down the snake path. So this snake path is about 1,000-foot drop from the top to the bottom, and it's a little over a mile or so. And I think it'll be a fun way to sort of tie in some biblical connections, even though Masada technically isn't mentioned specifically in the Bible. There may be a reference to this stronghold that David used back in 1 Samuel, a reference there in the Old Testament when King Saul was pursuing him. But we want to sort of focus on not only Herod the Great and certainly the Jewish story related to Masada, but to make a biblical connection with God being our own fortress still today. So, are you ready for an adventurous hike down Masada? I hope you are, and again, thanks for joining us. So, let's head out to the site and see it together. Allow me to introduce to you the site of Masada from the cliff to the south of this palace fortress built by Herod. You can see the Dead Sea to the east of this palace fortress, and yet we're right on the edge of the Judean desert. Panning to the left or to the west, we can see the Judean desert and this perspective of Masada. While we will hear and see more about what Herod did here at Masada, between 70 and 73 AD, 967 Jews found refuge from the Romans on top of this fortress. The Romans built this Roman ramp in order to get their battering ram to the top of this fortress in order to knock down the walls. Here, this Roman ramp can still be seen today. In 73 AD, all but a handful of these Jews decided to courageously kill themselves rather than to fall to the swords of the Romans. Now, these Jews were able to use what Herod the Great built almost 100 years before them. This included the storerooms filled with dried grain and fruit as found by the archaeologist, as well as this synagogue, one of only 7 that dates to the time of the first century. Because of the scarcity of rain, cisterns were used to collect the rainwater when it would fall only a few times a year. 12 cisterns were found, and water was used to fill these ritual baths, or mikveh as they are called in Hebrew. This one was found towards the northern palace of Herod the Great. This was a 3-tier palace built looking northward towards En-Gedi. Today we can still see the beautiful color of the frescoes. Some are original and some have been restored. So while the things that we can see on top are interesting and historical, part of the adventure of Masada is to walk down the snake path. On this eastern side of Masada, the snake path descends almost 1,000 feet, covering a little over a mile. Let's go hike this together.
Shalom, shalom from Masada, a palace fortress initially built by King Herod the Great as a place of refuge against a potential enemy. Also later used in the first revolt after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD by almost 1,000 Jews. They would seek refuge here from the Romans, who surrounded them for almost 3 years. We're walking down the snake path that begins from the top of this ancient palace fortress. It's located right on the western shoreline of the Dead Sea. Just about a 15-minute drive to the north is the city of En-Gedi, where David himself found refuge from the pursuit of King Saul. That story is mentioned in 1 Samuel chapter 24. Here's the Dead Sea in front of us. It's about 40 miles long. On the other side of the Dead Sea is Jordan. But this snake path is always a fun and adventurous experience for everyone who travels with us on an Israel trip. This snake path was the only way up on this eastern side of Masada. The path itself is about 1.5 miles long. And usually a number of people on every trip have a chance to experience walking down the snake path. Masada is mentioned not directly in the Bible, but the word Masada actually appears in Psalm 18. It's a wonderful chapter that reminds us that God is our refuge, He's our deliverer, but He's also our fortress. That word fortress in Hebrew is the word Masada. Masada. That's where the word Masada comes from. As we understand that the Bible offers us a picture of who God is. He's the one in whom we can place our trust in every situation and season of life. He is our high rock. He is our fortress. He is our Masada. He is our Masada. Walking down this snake path reminds us of situations in life when the trail gets difficult. Seasons of life become a challenge for us. And yet, instead of trusting in our own personal strength, we can confidently place our faith and trust in God, who is our ever-present and unchanging refuge and strength. He is our Masada.
Listen to a few of the verses written by David, recorded in Psalm 18. I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I called to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. The cords of death entangled me. The torrents of destruction overwhelmed me. The cords of the grave coiled around me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called to the Lord. I cried to my Lord for help. From his temple he heard my voice. My cry came before him into his ears. As for the Lord, his way is perfect. God's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him. So I hope that you can agree with me in saying that Masada is one of the most impressive and inspiring sights in all of Israel. Just to think that Herod the Great built this palace fortress. In fact, he built a number of them for his own safety. But what the Jews did between 70 and 73 AD, how they used this as a place of refuge against the Romans. And of course, how they courageously chose to take their own lives as well. You see, these Romans were right on the verge of using this Roman ramp that they built over the course of months prior to this, and they had their big battering ram, and they were all about to break through this casemate wall, this double wall of the palace fortress. And of course, what they discover is that these Jews took their own lives. But I'd like to think for sure that these Jews were trusting in God all the way to the end. And they were trusting in him as their, and here's that term or word, Masada. They were trusting in God as their fortress all the way to the very end of their lives. So when we walk down the snake path, the only way up and down back 2,000 years ago, I think it really reminds me, at least, and I hope it sort of helps you to understand that God is still in the business of being our own personal Masada, our fortress. When we teach this on the site with our groups that we lead, I think that word is so rich. So what I invite you to do next time that you read through the Old Testament or a particular psalm, you're going to see this word fortress many times. But just know that the word Masada is the Hebrew word that connects us to understanding that God still is our own personal fortress. So if you're encountering a difficult time or season in your life where you sort of need to hang on and grab hold of the promises of God, just know that He is still our fortress, our Masada. So thanks again for joining us today as we have visited and hiked down this palace fortress together. Hope you're able to join us next time as we continue to teach the Bible in the context of the land of Israel. Shalom.